Well, hello there. Pastor Doug and Vicky here, and welcome to Marriage Monday. We wanted to do something to give our marriages some attention, especially in light of the fact that we had to cancel our marriage retreat this year because of the coronavirus and the extra strain that we're hearing marriages are going through because of the coronavirus. Things that we're hearing are things such as the loss of income. That creates stress in a marriage. The kids were home earlier this year, mid-March for a lot of them were home, and that creates problems with moms and dads. But here's one that we're really hearing we want to spend some time with today, couples spending lots of time together. Now, I have a feeling come January, February, we're going to have a baby boom. There's going to be a lot of babies born come January, February because of all that time that couples are spending together. But there's some other things that are taking place. We want to talk about those things, some of the challenges that come with spending so much time together. And what happens oftentimes is the differences between people really begin to surface. Now, Vicky and I, we've been together since we've been 15 years old. And so I feel like we were able to weather this maybe a little bit better than some of these younger couples. But I got to be honest with you, and you'll verify this. It would have been hard for me as a young husband to spend so much time with you. Love you dearly, but young husbands are not used to spending all that time with their wives. So I know it's a strain on some of you. We want to see if we can help you. Now, again, when you spend time together, those differences are magnified. And so you and I are different. We have a lot of differences, but we also have some things that we have in common. Share some of those things that we do have in common.
We do. I mean, we have had these for a long time, but I think number one, the most important thing that we have in common is God. Mm-hmm. He is our passion. We love to serve him. We really gave our lives to him back in 1980 and walked out of Pastor Ron's office and never looked back. So we have really been serving him for a long time. So we have that passion together. We grow in him together. Being parents, Doug and I absolutely loved raising our children. We wish we could have had more children, but we loved raising Seth and Sarah. And then of course our grandbabies, all 5 of them are the loves of our life. And they bring us such great joy. So we have that in common. And besides that, we love music. We love the 70s music. We graduated in the 70s. We love, Journey and Doobie Brothers and Steve Miller Band. And so we love that. We love worship music, of course. That's always playing usually in our home. Mexican food is our favorite. And it helps that I have Mexican blood in me, so I make good Mexican food, but that is our favorite. And then of course, Denver Broncos. I've been a Denver Bronco fan. We have that in common since I was 15. Thought the quarterback, Craig Morton, was so cute, and that's what landed me to be a Denver Bronco fan. So it's been 45, 47, 48 years, and all of my family is on board. And so we are huge Bronco fans and sports fanatics. I will sit with Doug and watch UFC all day long. I will sit with Doug and watch NFL football games all day long. We are highly competitive, and we get our fix that way. So we have all of those things in common.
So we got more things in common probably than things that we differ on, but we do have some differences that we've had to work through. So share with the folks, share with some of the differences that we have.
Well, our differences, he loves to travel. Just this morning, he came in while I was getting ready, telling me that we're booking this trip here, and he wants to book this trip there, and our family's going to come in here, and he's a traveler. He likes to go. I'm not so much. I'm a terrible traveler. I have routine. I eat snacks at a certain time. I eat certain kinds of snacks, and I don't like to venture away from that, which isn't good, but he's a traveler. I'm not. I'm a homebody. I'm perfectly content in my home and staying in my home. So we have that. Doug is spontaneous. He's the fun guy. I'm not spontaneous. I'm probably the wet blanket that says, we need to plan this out. We need to think about this. We need to slow down. And that's another difference that we have. Doug is quick. He moves quick. Yesterday he came in, we were gonna go to the store because we go grocery shopping together. We've always done that, it's fun. But he said, we need to go to the store. And so, long story short, he said, okay, let's go. I said, wait a minute, I haven't even looked to see what we need. I like to plan, I like to write a list. I like to go on my Albertsons app and get all of my discounts. He goes, I got it right here in my head. I already know, let's go. I know what we need. That makes me nervous. That's a major difference, because here's what happens. We get to the store and I have flown out of the house because he's quick, and he'll look at me and say, do we need orange juice? And I will look at him and say, see, I told you if you would have slowed down, I could have wrote the list. But nonetheless, it's a difference that we have learned to adapt to, but it's definitely a difference for sure.
Yeah. Well, we want to take just a few minutes to talk about how we've worked through some of those differences over the years. And the little things, if you don't learn how to work through these things, they can really become big things. I think a lot of our folks that are listening now are dealing with some of those things. And so we hope that these things will help you. Here's the first thing that we learned is to accept each other's quirks and bends. We're all quirky. We all have things that are kind of important to us, but really not important to other people in the grand scheme of things, but we're just kind of quirky. And when I say bends, I'm talking about our personality, kind of how we view things. And those things are pretty much set. You really can't get away from your bends. That's your personality. Right. That's the way that you're kind of made. So, for instance, let me give you an example. Accepting each other's little quirks and bends. When we first got married, remember, we would have chili dogs. We eat a lot healthier now, but chili dogs was on our menu back in the day.
They're so good.
And so she'd put a bowl or a pot of beans on, and then to get them out of the pot onto the plate, she would use a teaspoon, that little tiny spoon. And they would take like 10, 1, 2, 3, and it used to drive me crazy. Yeah. And I would tell her, can we get a bigger spoon where you get like just one, or a ladle just like one time, but to 10 times, and it would drive me nuts. And we would get into big, full-on fights over that until eventually the Lord says, why are you making this such a big deal? Take the teaspoon out, grab you a spoon, put it in there, keep your mouth shut, you don't have to say anything, and just put it on your hot dog. And so I did that, and so I just realized that's just her, it's not a big deal to her. And so I've taken that principle over the years. Instead of saying something, I'll just either change it or I'll just live with it. Who cares if you have to go 10 times? Is it worth a fight? And the answer is no. So you have one on me. Tell them about the folding towel dilemma that you had to go through.
Yeah, well, as women and mothers and all the things we do, we have certain ways we like to do things. Well, at least I did, and I still do. And I would never really have my family help me with house cleaning or folding laundry, because I always liked it done a certain way. So the towels was a perfect example that Doug and I struggled with early on in our marriage. And I would take a towel, and I know this is me, I know it's probably OCD, but it is who I am, and I would take the towel out of the dryer, and I would fold in, and then throw it over the rack. Doug insisted on just taking his towel and folding it in half, and then just jamming it over the rack, and he was good. And I would walk out of the bathroom, and out of the corner of my eye, I could see that towel just kind of folded in half and jammed over the towel rack, and it would drive me absolutely nuts. And so I would say to him, you know what, babe, I kind of like it like this. I like, fold in, and I took the towel and I showed him, fold it in, and then put it over, and then we're good to go until, the next morning when we shower. Okay, yeah, okay. And sure enough, never, ever did he do that. Just didn't do it. Now, I could have taken it personal, and I think when I was younger I did, like, he doesn't care. He doesn't care what I said. He doesn't care that it means much to me. But like Doug said, as time went on, I thought, this isn't that big of a deal. I will just come behind him after he's long gone, he's already left for work or whatever, and I'll just take that towel and I'll just fold it, and both my towels will be uniform and perfect, and we're good to go. And I've been doing that for probably over 30 years. That just has never changed. But I feel like as we have gone on in marriage, almost 42 years, that's not a big deal anymore where it used to be, but it's just something that wasn't going to change, and there was no reason for me to gripe about it and get on him about it.
Right, right. And it's not even like I was being rebellious.
Right.
I just couldn't do it. I just couldn't do that little fold and then the fold. I just couldn't do it. Romans 15:7, I think, is a great verse to help with this principle. Therefore, accept one another, just as Christ also accepted us.
Amen.
And so if you couples out there, if you can learn just to accept those quirks and bends and not have them frustrate you, not have them anger you, but just say, that's just them. That's how they are. Realizing you've got your own quirks, you have your own bends, and don't make those things a big deal. Boy, your home will be a lot more peaceful.
Can I just make one more comment on that, babe?
Sure.
I was just going to say, this is where we have fallen in to areas that become major issues with marriages. And I just read, and I thought this was good, that if you ask a couple to sit down and write in one column your spouse's strengths, and in the other column you write their weaknesses, do you know that they found that weaknesses will win 5-1? And what a sad commentary that is. We just gave you 2 examples, and I know there's others, and you probably have your own. But when we sit down to write those things, the first thing that come to our mind are our spouse's weaknesses. We know those just like that. 5 weaknesses to 1 positive, and that's really something I think God would have us look at.
Yeah, focus on the strengths.
Exactly, we're not doing that.
Yes, yeah, that's a good point. Here's the second way that we think you can deal with your differences is learn each other's love languages. Vicky and I are big on that truth. Gary
Really
Chapman
big.
had a big book years ago. It's a bestseller 1,000,000 times over. If you've never read the book, I recommend that you get it, The 5 Love Languages. Those love languages are words of affirmation and acts of service, quality time, physical touch, and receiving gifts. And the idea behind that is that each of us uniquely have a love language that we receive love best in that area. For instance, if yours is words of affirmation, which is Vicky's, by the way, she feels most love and feels really satisfied. We call it our love tank. Your love tank gets full when somebody makes a deposit with their love language in mind. So when I say nice things to her, they really make her feel good. In fact, tell the folks what you've told me the years. How does it feel when I say something complimentary or really nice towards you?
Yeah, it's amazing. When Doug speaks my love language, words of affirmation, and he says, you know what, babe, I just want to tell you, great job today at the office. Or, you know what, I came home and gosh, this house is always so clean. Good dinner. Thank you so much. When he compliments me on things that I'm doing, I'm telling you, I could soar on that for days. I feel confident. It makes me feel capable of what I'm doing. I actually kind of have such strength that I feel like I can take on anything, even where insecurity might set in. When he speaks that to me and tells me that I'm doing a good job and he's proud of me, I feel like I can take on anything. And most importantly, I feel really loved by Doug.
Yeah, that's good. Now, my love language is not words of affirmation, it's acts of service. And here's the thing is because mine is acts of service, there is a tendency to give love away to your spouse, a way that you receive it. And so I would, in years past, I would go in there and tell Vicky, hey, I made you breakfast, here it is. And she would say, oh, that's great. But then I would go right after that and say something mean to her. And so whatever I thought I was doing good was just completely devastated because of my harsh words. So we have to realize that just because you have a love language, your spouse is different. And so for me, Vicky will say words of affirmation to me, and I appreciate it, but that doesn't do as much for me as if she was to come home and say, hey, you know what, I knew you were hungry, didn't have lunch, I stopped and got you a taco at Roberto's. And when that happens, I feel like the most loved man on the face of the earth. And if she gets me some green salsa, I'm over the moon. So, boy, again, if you've never read that book, grab it. If you know about the love languages, practice them. Maybe a refresher course. And really put into practice. It will just do great things concerning your marriage. And then lastly, we want to talk about, this is probably one of the most important way to resolve your differences, is to understand the purposes of marriage. And I want to emphasize the plural of purposes. The purposes of marriage. If you have unrealistic expectations, unrealistic purposes, then you're going to be very frustrated and unhappy in your marriage. Now, what are the purposes? Well, here's a few. This isn't a complete list, but one is companionship.
Absolutely.
You get married because you want a companion. It goes back to the Garden of Eden. It's not good that man's alone. So you want to be able to spend time together. Sexual fulfillment. That's another one. Paul talked about that. It's better to marry than to burn with lust. Procreation. Go, God said, to multiply and fill the earth, to have children. But there's another reason, and it's really not spoken of as much, but arguably the most important, and that is to help us grow spiritually. Our marriages are training grounds to help us grow spiritually. Now, you had a cool thought, a truth that God gave you years ago. In fact, you shared it at a couples retreat a while back. Share that truth that God told you.
Yeah, well, actually, I was preparing for a retreat several years ago, 4 or 5 years ago, and I came across this on a book, and I didn't read the book, but I just kind of ran through the book real quick, and it was called Sacred Marriage. I'm not sure who the author was, but in that book, it asked this question: what if God designed marriage to make us holy more than to make us happy? What if he designed marriage to make us holy more than to be happy? And man, that hit me, and I thought, that's it. I want to elaborate on that, because I truly think that marriage is really a spiritual discipline, as we have in every other area of our life. As we function on a day-to-day basis, as we go out and as we come in, as we raise our kids, as we go to work, as we relate to friends, to our employers, to people in authority. I mean, in everyday life, I don't think marriage is different. I think it enables us to apply a spiritual discipline that I think for a lot of couples, they're missing. It's almost as if in marriages, you just let it fly. You just let it rip. And there's not that discipline of, you know what, you don't always have to say what you're thinking. There's not that discipline sometimes of how the Bible tells us that women, you're to respect your husbands. There's a line that you can't cross with words that you say, talking about him in front of other people. The Bible makes it very clear, women, respect your husbands. It's a spiritual discipline. Same as husbands, love your wife the way Christ loved the church. It's a spiritual discipline. And so I really do believe that I think that God maybe had that in mind. He designed marriage to help us become more holy than to be happy. And I know that a lot of marriages, you hear the wives or the husbands say, I'm not happy. I'm just not happy. And I have said that before when I was a younger wife. But now, many years later, and as I walk with God, I want to take this spiritual discipline of marriage and apply it. Even though Doug and I have been married almost 42 years, it still doesn't mean that our marriage is easy. We still have to work on it. I still have to watch what comes out of my mouth. I still have to watch my attitude, my tone, and be respectful. And so I think that, I think there is an element that we need to let God make us holy in the midst of our marriage.
And I think that the proverb, very well-known proverb, iron sharpens iron, so one man sharpens another, is really so true in marriage. In fact, I want to illustrate that. You may have seen one of these. This is a steel rod. This is a steel sharpening tool, and this is a knife. And how this thing works is because this is sharp, and it goes against the dullness of the knife there. And very often that's what happens in marriage, is that as we rub up against each other, and as we have even conflict sometimes, through conflict oftentimes, God will chisel off some of those rough edges, and you will have to change, and you will have to confess your wrongs and apologize. And through that conflict, you will have to learn self-discipline, patience, self-control, prayer, those things. And all the while, as you're doing that, you're becoming really mature in the Lord and ultimately very effective for God. Because if you don't have your marriage down, you really can't do the things that God wants you to do. I've seen ministers over the years. I've seen people over the years that have potential callings on their life. They could be such awesome Christians, but they can't get their marriage together.
Right.
And as a result of that, they just continue to stay in that place of not being used as fully because their marriage is just such a hindrance to them. So anyway, we could give you a lot more, but we wanted to just take some time with you today and tonight, whenever you're viewing this, to watch it and in hopes that it will help you. And so anyway, God bless you and have a great rest of your night and day. Bye-bye.